your mind to default. You just can't undo the harm caused. In a memory where the key got lost, it is hard to find what you need the most. In a distant light, I followed you home. Yeah, we won the fight, and it's written in stone. In the brightest hour of my time.
That's it, the final long run before Brighton Marathon on the 10th of April. Just 12 miles at a nice, comfortable Zone 2 pace. The final long run in the bag. The hay is in the barn, as they say, and the work is done. All that's left to do in the days in between is keep the legs ticking over a little bit of speed work, a little bit of Zone 2 running, but mostly just time to rest, relax, and prepare for race day. So I'm going to split this video into a few different sections. Fair warning, it may be a bit of a long one, so I've time-stamped the different parts of the video, so feel free to skip ahead to the bits that interest you or stick around for the ride. So in my last marathon update, published at the end of February, just after Storm Eunice had blown through, you might remember me saying that the training hadn't gone as smoothly as I'd hoped. Life had got in the way and I'd missed quite a few sessions, so I committed to cleaning up my diet, getting out there for every workout on the plan, and working in a few strength sessions in the hopes of being able to turn the training block around and get back on track to running a sub 3 hour marathon. Now we're going to get into the training week by week since we left off, but I'll just quickly say that I have been managing a couple of strength training sessions each week, as well as cleaning up the diet too. This is a pretty big one for me. I haven't had a beer since the last update and have generally just been eating more cleanly, more greens and salads, and a lot less biscuits. So all good on that front, feeling a lot better for it, and later we'll take a look at what the online calculators and race predictors are saying for my marathon time, and I'll give you an idea of my race plan as well. But first, let's have a look at the training. Now, I think I mentioned in my last video that the level 2 plan has you running 7 days a week for most weeks. Now, I decided pretty early on in the plan that running 7 days a week is just a bit too much for me. So this plan is also stepping up the average mileage that you're running each week compared to the last level of plan as well. And I just thought running that extra day, not giving my body enough time to rest, would probably be too much, and I didn't want to risk injury. I just felt like I needed that day off just to chill things out a bit. Now in the future going forwards, I think that might change. I'd love to be able to run every day. Now I'm not a streaker, you know, not a person who does like running streaks and runs every day, that kind of thing, but I just like the way of that it's, you know, kind of increases that daily mileage. Now the Monday runs on the plan are always just half an hour. It's always in zone 1, so it's very, very gentle running, and it will just see that mileage increase that little bit more. But for the moment, I thought it wise just to take that Monday off, use it as a recover or a strength training session, and, you know, not risk that injury. Okay, so week 12 of the 18-week plan looks pretty decent. 6 hours and 53 minutes of running, along with 3,337 feet of elevation, starting with a progression run on Tuesday. Now, these are an absolute beast of a workout. A good chunk of it is completed in zone 2, but once that's up, it's 16 minutes hard, 8 minutes harder, and then the final 4 minutes very hard with no rest in between. It's an absolute screamer, but a really good way to start the week and commit to those new goals. Wednesday and Thursday were both 50-minute foundation runs before a speed intervals run on Friday. 10 lots of 1-minute blasts at top speed in zone 5, with a 2-minute recovery between each one. So another fast and hard session, but the long rests are very welcome. Then we had another foundation run on Saturday, which weirdly when I woke up I didn't feel that well, so I missed parkrun that week. I was worried that it might be that dreaded COVID, but fortunately by the afternoon, whatever it was had kind of disappeared. All was well and I managed to get out for 6 easy miles. Sunday's long run was a depletion run. Now these are fasted runs where you get the session done kind of first thing in the morning before eating. I think fasted runs are a really interesting part of this plan. It's not something I've tried before, and it's a very different experience for a long run if, like me, you're used to not getting up really early and not eating before a run. So I'm going to go into more detail on that, into the hows and whys of fasted running as part of the 80/20 Run Faster series. So if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss that one. So altogether, a pretty decent and consistent week of running, a really positive step in the right direction, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose in getting the work on the plan done. Week 13 followed a very similar path. You'll notice the foundation runs increasing a touch, Tuesdays and Saturdays both being an hour long, with Wednesdays an hour and 5 minutes. The speed sessions for this week were the critical velocity run. I've made a whole video on that one, so if you want to see that in action, check out the video here. And then on Friday we had a lactate interval session, and again you can check out that video of that workout up here. Sunday's long run was fun, 16 miles in total, 1 hour and 40 minutes in zone 2 with the last 10 minutes in zone 3. It's what they call in the 80/20 plan a fast finish. Now, I was wearing the Nike Next Percent 2 for that run, and that was the sort of first run in those shoes and first impressions review of it here, but that was just an absolute joy to run in. Bright spring sunshine, bouncy new carbon plated shoes, and the first signs that the renewed effort in training was beginning to pay off. Most of those miles were completed at or faster than marathon race pace. And those Next Percent 2s really just want you to go fast. So it was a bit of a sort of tightrope walk on the zone 2, sort of zone X borderline for most of that run before kicking in for those last 10 minutes, which was just, it was hard, but it was great fun, and just to let go and let fly in those shoes. So another positive end to a consistent week. Week 14 then starts with one of my least favourite 80/20 interval sessions, but for some reason I actually really enjoyed this one. 4 lots of 9-minute intervals split into 3 minutes at zone 3, 3 minutes in zone Y, which is slightly faster than zone 3, and then a pretty big 3-minute rest. So a little bit like that fast finish run, kicking into that higher gear after running pretty strong is quite difficult mentally, and by the 4th rep it's quite difficult physically too. But I pretty much hit my targets here before Sunday's long run, the longest run in the plan, 22 miles altogether, and what an adventure that was. Now, I'd obviously been a little bit spoilt by all the spring sunshine over the last couple of weeks because we had all 4 seasons in one run. Sideways wind, lashing rain, hail, just about everything the weather could throw at me, and I've got to take responsibility for this one as well. It's my fault. I really should have looked at the forecast beforehand because I decided to wear only a t-shirt, some shorts, and then my hydration vest, the Solomon hydration vest. Definitely needed another layer for that run, really. So not only was I not dressed for the run and the conditions, I had tech issues too. My fancy pants Garmin watch that has maps and routes on it just decided not to work. This usually isn't a problem because I just go out and back, but for fun on this 22 mile, the longest run in the whole plan, I wanted to run from my house and then run 22 miles away from my house to another large village nearby. So we had arranged for Rachel to come and pick me up in about 3 hours-ish time, and then 15 miles in, I get onto the part of the Tarka Trail that I've never been on before. And then after a mile or so, I realised that I'm somehow running past the things that I've already run past, but in the opposite direction. It was kind of like an episode of Scooby-Doo where the background just keeps repeating on itself. So I take a look at the map on my watch, blank, nothing, just a single straight red line. Absolutely useless. Eventually I figured out where I went wrong. I managed to run around the local nature reserve, but couldn't find out how to get off that trail and then back onto the Tarka trail. And I still had to navigate my way to the agreed endpoint somehow. So the Tarka trail just seems to end at this nature reserve, and I'm not quite sure how to get off it and keep going in the right direction. I did have it all planned out as a route on my watch, but that wasn't working either, so I just had to use my not very good sense of direction. I'm very well known for getting lost in races, unless there's like great big barriers either side of me, but that's another story for another day. And so I found the nearest road and went in the direction that I hoped was right. And it turns out I got very lucky. 2 miles along the road I found a sign confirming that I was headed in the right direction, and I breathed the biggest sigh of relief. The next few miles just flew by in blissful relief, but was quickly replaced with irritation as I got to my destination, only to find out that taking the road had shortened my route considerably and I still had another 5k to go. So, one park run later, I found Rachel and she was just awesome. Towel, change of clothes, all that kind of stuff, as well as a nice green smoothie and a homemade vegan pasty. Perfect. I couldn't have been happier. Pace-wise, despite all the wrong turns and the adventure and the weather, I managed to stay in that zone 2 and pretty much stay on target as well. But moral of the story, dress for the conditions, run with a phone, and don't rely on technology to get you free. Okay, so week 15 starts with one of my favourite sessions, which is a fartlek. If you don't know what that is, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button, because there's going to be a fartlek video coming out soon which will explain everything about fartlek and why you should be putting them into your training. The foundation runs have backed off this week to 50, 55 and 50 minutes. That's because every 3 weeks in the 80-20 training plan, we've got an active rest week, so the amount of running time just eases off a little bit compared to the previous 2 weeks. Now then, on Friday, another favourite session of mine, hill reps. This time only 5 reps, but each is 2 minutes long, so a decent session and the first warm weather session of the year. I forgot how much of a difference that makes to the overall perceived effort of the session. It's definitely a lot harder to run in warm weather, especially if you're not conditioned to it after a fairly long and cold winter, but really can't complain. I love running in the sunshine. And then on the plan we had another depletion run for the long run on Sunday, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a fasted run. This time 2 hours and 40 minutes long. I did go off plan a little here. This workout coincided with the end of Rachel's half marathon plan, and she was really keen to have a crack at ducking under that 2 hour mark and getting a PB. And without a local race coinciding with the end of her plan, she decided to do it along the Tarka Trail, which is a gently undulating but mostly flat sort of old railway line. And yeah, she asked for my help with pacing her to under 2 hours. So around the first 40 minutes of the session, a little harder for meeting up with Rachel and completing the next 2 hours with her in mostly, I think, zone 1. Some things are more important than hitting your training goals, and to see Rachel achieve her goal and to be a part of that was really special. She absolutely crushed it and was raising money for Viva Poland, who are helping to rescue Ukrainian animals and bring them to safety. So a great achievement made all the more rewarding by running for a really good cause. Very proud husband here, and if you'd like to help Rachel reach her fundraising goal, I'll leave a link to her Just Giving page down in the description. So that brings me up to week 16, and easily the hardest week of the entire plan. It started with a steady state run where you hold a pace just below race pace for an hour with 15 minutes in zone 2 either side of that. Doesn't sound all that tough, but it's long enough and just above zone 2 enough to feel like a really good workout. And when you consider that some of the long runs in the plan are this long, it's a pretty big 12-mile workout to start the week. And then this was followed up by an hour's foundation run the next day, and then an hour and 10 minutes foundation run the day after that, and then a 5k pace intervals workout on Friday. And those are never easy. 600 meter repeats at 5k pace with 100 meters walking rest in between each one. Now with all that time on my feet already, with that week, my legs were absolutely barking by Friday evening. But there's no rest for the wicked because we've got an hour's foundation run to cover on Saturday, which included filming the final Devon Park run at Seaton, which of course I ran too fast. I forgot my watch, not that that would have made much of a difference anyway, but I managed to run it in under 20 minutes. It's supposed to be a foundation run. Ran it far too fast and then paid for it the next day with another beast of a long run on Sunday, which is a marathon paced run, 20 miles long. It's supposed to be a dress rehearsal for the upcoming race in Brighton. This was a pretty interesting one, 6 miles at race pace, so 6:50-ish for me, with 2 miles either side as a warm-up and a cool-down. Now, I did use this one as a dress rehearsal for Brighton, trying out all the kit, the gels, the camera gear, etc. to make sure that everything felt good before race day and I wasn't going to have any issues. So on the whole it went okay. I managed an average pace of 6:50 for those 16 miles, but it wasn't without some hiccups along the way. First up, the heat, and it was unseasonably hot, 17 degrees, and I was foolishly running without water. Now that led to the last few miles being a real effort, tightness in the legs and a much longer recovery over the next few days than I'd normally take. So I've since done a little bit of reading on hydration, and apparently ideally you want to consume at least 400 mils of liquid for every hour of running, and you don't want to lose more than 2% of your total body weight in sweat, otherwise your performance begins to decrease. So doing a little bit of maths, I estimated I was running at around about an 8% body weight loss, so pretty far from ideal. And then couple that with that sub 20 minute 5k the day before, running into a strong headwind as well as on that Sunday for half the run, and yeah, had a pretty decent recipe for disaster. So initially after that workout I was a little bit deflated, but on reflection I think it kind of went better than I thought. And hopefully, if I can stay hydrated, it's cooler and not so windy at Brighton, with a gradual tapered rest, I should be on for a sub 3 hour marathon. Finally, week 17 backed off a touch from the week before. A pretty tough tempo run to start the week, 2 blocks of 20 minutes in zone 3 here. Not that difficult, but my legs were still recovering from Sunday's session. And then the foundation runs are starting to wind down now, starting with an hour and then 55 minutes and then 50 on Saturday. Friday's speed session was another progression run, slightly easier than the last one I did in week 12. 12 minutes hard, 6 minutes harder, 3 minutes really hard, before finally bringing us up to today's long run of just 12 miles. Which leaves us with just 7 days, 1 week until race day. Now you'd expect a really light week, and I suppose compared to week 16 and most weeks in the training plan it is, but we've still got another fartlek to hit on Tuesday, a 45 minute and a 40 minute foundation run to complete before the final speed session, a fast finish run that's just 40 minutes long before a 20 minute shakeout on Saturday, hopefully with the Brighton vegan runners crew at Hove Park Run, before picking up my race number and relaxing for the rest of the day. Following on from Kofusi's video a couple of weeks ago where he tried to predict his race time using online calculators, I thought I'd have a go at this since I've never used anything like it before. And it's pretty cool too, as a couple of the calculators will use your training data from Garmin or Strava to predict your marathon time, and then there's the fitness graph on Strava as well that I'll show to you to see how it's stacking up against my fitness from last October when I ran Manchester Marathon in 2:57. Okay, so we might as well start with that Strava graph, which I was pretty surprised at. If we go back to the few weeks before Manchester Marathon, you can see the fitness score is around 105 to 115, and then it goes up to where around the Manchester Marathon and then nosedives to the beginning of this plan. and then incrementally kind of creeps up to now where it's sitting at around 110 to 120. So theoretically making me fitter than I was before Manchester. So that looks pretty positive. The only thing I would say though is that this score seems to be heavily weighted by how far you run. So I could do a lot of very easy, slow miles, no speed work, and get a higher score, I think. So it's a cool indicator, but I doubt its accuracy. So on to another calculator then. This one is called Metaphon, and this one is a plugin for Strava. It's based around average weekly mileage and average training pace. So apparently a 2011 study using this formula was able to predict to within 4 minutes the finishing times of the subjects. So this has given me a predicted time of around the 3 hours and 12 minute mark, which is a little bit sobering. I could be around this mark. This training block hasn't been as consistent, but a couple of things do jump out at me. With the 80-20 training, a lot of that weekly mileage is done at a pace slower than marathon pace, and the terrain that I'm running on as well is going to factor into this calculation. So most of my runs have an average elevation gain of about 600 feet. Not huge by any means, but considerably more than just, running on a track. Now it's interesting though, and the graph is kind of cool, the curve getting lower as your predicted marathon pace gets faster. And then onto the last predictor, and this one is on a website called runalyze.com. I've never used it before, and it looks as if it has a ton of tools and stats and data. I haven't had a chance to play around with all of it yet, but if you're into running data, this looks like the site for you. So if we go to the tools and then go to marathon shape, there's a couple of interesting things here. So it says my VO2 max is 55, giving me an optimal marathon time of 2:54, which on the face of it sounds pretty awesome. Great. But then if you scroll down to the bottom of the graph, it gets a little less awesome, as the calculators then look at your weekly mileage using Strava and work out where your marathon time is currently. And according to this, it's something like 3:20-ish, 3:24, something like that. So a little bit disheartening, but again, I don't know, it's probably a bit skewed. So if you do a little bit of the reading around this page, it says something like you need to be running 70 miles a week, something like that, with at least one long run of 20 miles. And I don't know many marathon plans that recommend a weekly 20-mile long run every week, and 60 miles a week as an average, certainly not the first three levels of the 80-20 plans that I've been using anyway. So I don't know. I guess it's kind of an indicator, isn't it? You just kind of take it with a pinch of salt. Now, Runalyze is suggesting that that's what what's needed to reach my peak VO2 max is the 20 miles a week, and then I would be able to the long run of 20 miles a week, along with the weekly mileage like 60 to 70 miles, and then I'll be able to get 2:54. So a mixed bag on the predictors here, sort of ranging from 2:54 to 3:28. In terms of pace, that's anything from a 6:40 to a 7:55 minute mile. A pretty wide scope. You never know what's going to happen on race day, so I wouldn't rule out a 3:28, but I think in likelihood that's probably at the far end of likeliness, at least I hope so. And then 2:54 probably isn't that achievable either. I don't know, it's really hard to say. I think I felt fitter and stronger last October, but I now have more mileage and more experience of the marathon distance under my belt. And at this stage of the taper and the marathon plan, who doesn't feel a little bit worn out and a bit beat up? Right, that's what the predictors are saying for me. What do you reckon though? Comment down below just for fun. What do you think my marathon time is going to be at Brighton this year? Look, at the course might come into play as well, because looking at the course of Brighton, it has more than double the elevation of Manchester. Compared to the Manchester Marathon, I think it has about 1,000 feet of elevation compared to 400 feet. So over the marathon distance, I don't see that having a huge impact. I think the I think most of that elevation at Brighton Marathon is done in the first sort of 4 or 5 miles, so there must be some decent hills, I think, in that first section, and then from what I've seen it's pretty flat, so that will factor into the time a little bit, I think. But I think what will have the biggest impact really will be the weather conditions. It was, for me at least anyway, for Manchester, it was pretty much perfect. It was a bright sunny day, but it didn't get too warm, you know, maybe even within the last sort of half an hour it did. And then if you were in one of the later waves, it really heated up as the afternoon wore on, but it was pretty much, to get started at like 9 o'clock, whenever it was pretty much ideal. For Brighton this time of the year, who knows? I mean, Manchester, they've had snow recently. I know it's like it's been freezing in Brighton recently. According to the weather, it's kind of heating up, warming up a little bit, but who knows? If we get the April heat wave that the Daily Express thinks we're going to have, then that's going to be pretty huge, I think, for a lot of people. But especially after kind of training through the winter, we're just not acclimatized to that warm weather running yet. And unlike October, where we had to train through the summer, so we had that added benefit of training through the heat, and that kind of makes cool weather running that little bit easier. Who knows? But yeah, apparently it's going to be about 12-13 degrees at the moment, and chance of rain and a moderate breeze, which I've read is yeah, you're going to get a fair headwind or so out on the, you know, you're going to be exposed on that sort of open stretch, which is quite a lot of the marathon. So who knows? Those kind of things are always completely out of your control. You can just do the best that we can. So yeah, the good news though is that I've just had an email through from the Brighton Marathon organisers saying that I'm in the white wave, which is the first wave to go off. So hopefully I can get nearish to the front and then won't have too much weaving to do in the first few miles. So I think the plan for race day at the moment is to find a sub-3 pacer and stay with them for the first half of the race, and then either push on or drop back from there depending on how it's going. Now, I always make a plan and then it changes last minute, or I adjust to how I'm feeling on the day. So it could be like Manchester, where I'd planned to stay with the pacer, but I just felt good, and I just inched ahead. I didn't go too much faster, but I might do that, and it depends with the hills at the start of Brighton as well. Might be wise to stick with the pacer, at least for those first sort of 5 to 10 miles or so, but we'll see how it goes. That's the plan, that's what I'm visualising at the moment. But the key rules that I stood by for Manchester though, I will hold on to. So don't go out too fast. It's an old one, but it's a gold one. Now I started kind of near the front at Manchester, first wave to go off, but what was so surprising as a first marathon, the number of people that were dropping back by mile 2 was just staggering to me. Like, they're breathing hard and struggling is not how you want to feel 2 miles in, and it's just that race day excitement, that adrenaline. The legs feel so fresh. Those carbon plated shoes just want you to launch off like a rocket. But yeah, I was kind of shocked that so many people were just charging on ahead, and obviously getting a little bit carried away. When you've got so far to run, that could present some problems. So I have an issue with this every single week at parkruns, so I'm just gonna hopefully do what I did at Manchester, pay a bit of respect to the distance and just ease into it, and then hopefully I won't have any issues, because all along that Manchester Marathon course, just particularly at the sort of 22 to 23 mile mark, a lot of people were pulling up with cramp or digestion issues, hitting the wall. I think that's much more likely to happen if you've gone out too hard in those first few miles or that first half of the race. So fingers crossed, I'll ease into it. I do think it's tricky to get right, and the taper has left you with really fresh legs. So it's just one thing to be aware of and one thing to really nail in. It's a good positive start if you can start and get into that rhythm of your race pace and get in there in the last 3 miles, not worry about what anyone else is doing and how many people might be going past you. It's a really good kind of after the first few miles, go, look, I'm on target pace, feeling good, and then you're starting to kind of take over people and stuff as well. It's just a nice positive way to start the race and get your head into the right frame of mind. So I can't wait to get going and get to that start line. We've got an Airbnb all booked up, and it's hopefully not too far away from the start. So we'll be heading up to Brighton on Friday, giving us plenty of time to explore the area, enjoy some of the amazing vegan food that I know they have up there, and generally just take it easy until Sunday morning. Of course, I'll be taking the GoPro around with me again like I did for Manchester, so expect a race day video coming out soon. Right, that just about brings us to the end of this video. If you're running Brighton or another spring marathon that's coming up soon, I really hope your training has gone well and your race goes even better. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe button down below, and until the next one, be the best you.